Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the Texas Reloading Room. My name is Justin, and I'm getting prepped today to go to a new gun range that I haven't been to, but it's been highly recommended to me by multiple people, and their membership fees are affordable. So I'm going to go check it out and see what they've got to offer. And I'm also taking, you could say, a new firearm with me. So let me go ahead and show you that real quick. This is a Taurus Tracker. It is a 38 Special 357 Magnum revolver. One of the reasons I have this is actually because it was malfunctioning. I have since repaired that issue, but what we are going to do is go test fire it, and by test fire I'm probably going to put at least 50 rounds through it. The strange thing about this revolver is it is a 7-shot revolver. A little bit unique. I'm used to 6 shooters, and if we're talking about a 45 Colt, some of the more modern ones hold 5. But this is a 7-shot, and I'm going to go ahead and take it, get it a little bit dirty, and then bring it back home and take it apart and clean it up, and you guys will get some good idea of the inner workings of a 3-screw revolver, which is what I like to call them. 3-screw revolver. We'll take it apart and I'll show you the inner workings of it, and hopefully you guys will get a better idea of exactly how these fit together. They're super simple, even though they may seem intimidating at first, but I'm going to go ahead and take off. I'll see you guys at the range. Alright guys, we're back from the range now. I did not shoot very much at the range, but it is what it is. Anyway, we're back now at the bench, and I'm going to go ahead and flip the camera around. We're actually going to take this Taurus Tracker apart piece by piece, and we'll go over everything that's involved in it, and I'll show you how simple these are to work with. Alright, so here we are on the bench. I flipped one of my tech mats upside down, so I've got a plain black surface, and we're going to go ahead and start taking this apart. And you will need a good set of hollow ground bits. That is paramount. At the very least, I would recommend some needle nose pliers. We may or may not use these. And for cleaning, I'm going to use a nylon bristle brush, a 90-degree hook pick, and a straight pick. My 357 38 caliber brass brush, and my cable snake from my Otis kit. Never hurts to have some Croyle on the bench. Lead remover, we may not need this. I didn't fire that much, but I was shooting hand cast bullets, so I have lead remover just in case. And I have a tornado brush if things get serious, and as you know, most of my cleaning is done with rim oil. And I'm using this AMSOIL lubricant. It's a very good synthetic lubricant, and it works wonders. So what we need to go ahead and do then is find the proper bit to take the grip off. These Taurus grips screw in from the bottom here. Now while we go through this, I'm going to do my best to name off all the parts for you. There may be once or twice here and there where I don't know the exact name of the part, so if I go quiet, I'm probably actually looking it up to see what the technical name of the part is, just so I don't give you guys any bad information. I know how everything fits back together in these, but I may not necessarily know all of the names of the parts. And most of them are going to be pretty pretty familiar to me, so we'll encounter that if it even comes up. Now this will need a little bit of scrubbing. I know there's not necessarily some corrosion, but there's a lot of buildup underneath the grip here, and you'll see that here in just a minute. Okay. You see we've got a lot of junk here. I'm going to have to scrub that off. I like things to be nice and clean whether you can see it or not. Okay, so now that we've got the grip off, let's go ahead and take our 3 screws out. Now on this particular Revolver, this front screw here is going to be different than the other 2, and this is also going to have a spring and detent underneath it that locks the crane assembly into the firearm's frame. And on my particular Herder screwdriver set, this actually takes the smallest flathead that we've got. Now if it is too tight, your screw tip might actually start to bend a little bit, so watch out for that. And just remember where these screws came in. When you take that front screw out, go ahead and hold your hand under it and flip it over. That way you can get that spring and detent out of there. And we're just going to set these off to the side here for now. And these 2 screws will be a little bit longer. And you will also need for this, I forgot to mention, a couple of paper clips, or for me I'm actually using the spring leads from a AR-15 hammer spring, which I actually need to grab. But I'll worry about that here in just a second. Here it is right here. Okay, so now that we have the screws out of the side plate, what you can do is I'll take a soft blow mallet here and I'll tap until it starts to loosen up just a little bit, and then I can get my tool here. It's just a random tool deal, and I will lift up on the back end of it, and it will just come free just like that. We can set that off to the side. Now we can see all the inner workings of the Revolver. It looks complicated, but trust me, it is not. It's actually very simple. So now here is where we're going to need our retainer. So pull the hammer back, and as you can see here on the hammer spring, when it's pushed and compressed, there's a little hole right there. We're going to feed our paper clip into that hole and then release the tension, and that will allow us to remove the hammer strut and the spring. Okay, now you can also do the same thing with the trigger spring right here. There is another one, same size hole. And that'll just lift out just like that. Now you can set these aside. You don't want to take these any further apart. It'll be hell to get them back together. Next, we need to pop out our cylinder, and for that the pick will come in handy. So this little piece right here, pull that back. Actually, we need to push it out, I'm sorry. If we push that out, it should give us enough to drop the come on, why is this not wanting to work? Looks like the stop is getting in the way here, so we'll pull the stop down and then push this forward, and it should pop it out. Okay, and then we can just take that right off. Now you can further disassemble this if you'd like to. I'll show you part of that here in just a moment. And On some it's tight, on some it's loose. This pin just falls out of this one. Now some it won't do that. This is actually the firing pin retaining pin, so you don't want to lose that. Okay, so now that that stuff's apart, what I'm going to do is pull the hand out. If it'll cooperate with me. Pull the hand out and lift it up. Now there's a detent for this on the back of the trigger. Make sure that doesn't fall out. Now that the hand is out, we can just about half cock, I guess, and then slowly lift the hammer out. And here's the hammer assembly itself. Now you can take this further down if you'd like to. I choose not to, but it's not hard to do. All you got to do is lift up and make sure that that spring doesn't fly out. It's a very small spring. I don't know if you can even see that in my hand. That's the size of the spring. So we'll set that aside for now. And next what we want to do is lift the trigger assembly out like that, and that will leave our transfer bar in there. You can just pull your transfer bar out, set that aside, and on here you can see where the back side of the trigger spring goes in. This is going to be the detent that puts pressure on the actual hand itself to push it up into place. Just leave those two together. Go ahead and push the cylinder stop out, and that'll just, what you can do is turn it over and it should just fall out just like that, and that's your cylinder stop. And then we can pull this back. Somebody has decided all times to mow their yard. Right now is a good time. Maybe I just record videos at the wrong times for these other people. Okay. And in order to get this piece out, you've actually got to take the cylinder release off. That's the wrong screwdriver. Okay, cylinder release and the release screw, and then you should just be able to slide that right out. This, whenever this is in and it snaps closed, it pushes this back, and that's essentially what allows the hammer and triggers to function. And it also helps make sure, along with this piece right here sticking out of the center, it helps make sure the cylinder's locked in place and doesn't just flop free. Now we can go one step further and take out the firing pin. That is entirely up to you. I really don't think that's necessary, but I am going to look around it and just make sure there's nothing dirty or anything like that. Now it could be a little bit difficult on this particular one to take it out because it looks like the back of the firing pin contact has been peened into place to keep it from coming out. So we're just going to leave that alone. Very rare that anything would ever happen to this style of firing pin. So essentially here on the frame, that's all that you need to do. We'll go ahead and take our crane here, and on this end right here you've got a spring inside of it, followed by this, which puts pressure on it and basically keeps it in one consistent smooth flow. versus moving around back and forth. Usually what I have done is, to actually repair the problem that I was having with this, I disassembled the ejector assembly. And to do that, you actually need to turn this to the right because this is reverse threaded. And be very careful with it because there's 2 springs in here. Pull that out. And here is the smaller spring that actually presses directly on the contact point inside here to push that detent out. And there is the larger spring right here that actually contacts this and pushes it back out after you eject your brass. And once that is unscrewed, you can simply pull the star head out, or the ejector assembly, whatever you'd like to call it. And all you'd need to do to get that out is take, where'd mine go? Use this, but you can take a punch and just tap that right out, and it'll come right out just like that. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and give this a real quick cleanup, and then we will put it back together. Okay, so I've got all my parts cleaned up. The next thing I want to do is go ahead and reassemble the cylinder and the crane. So we'll take this piece here, and you can see it's got a wide end and a slender end. Drop the slender end into the back of the ejection star, and then just press it into place with this until you hear it click, just like that. Now it should be protruding. Focus. It should protrude a little bit like that. Okay, now your slender spring, now this is the spring that's basically got both ends of it closed off. Drop that in behind the rod, and then go ahead and feed this back into your cylinder. It will only go in one way, just like that. Now your large spring, insert it into the back into the crane, and finally your ejector rod, insert that and then thread it into the left. Remember, it is a reverse thread. Alright, now before we forget about the pieces, go ahead and take your spring, your small spring, insert it here, and then behind that go ahead and put your plunger, just like that. And we'll set that off to the side just like this. We probably won't get to this until we're almost completely finished with the reassembly. Alright, so I am going to go ahead and turn this around so that you guys are looking at it like you would be on your bench, just like this, and I'll do my best to reassemble it sitting this way. So the first thing that we're going to want to put back in is actually this piece here. Let me see if I can't figure out exactly what they're calling this piece. I attempted to call it a stop, but I don't think that's actually what it is here, so let me look. Let's see. They're calling this the bolt. At least Smith & Wesson calls this the bolt. Different people may have a different name for it. There is that small spring that goes on the back of it here, just like that. And now drop that into the groove there and just compress your spring in just enough so that it fits in the groove just like that. Okay. Next, let's go ahead and put our cylinder stop back in. Whoops. And from the way you're looking, it will go in just like this. Actually, no, I'm sorry. It will go in like this. Okay, just like that. Next, we want to take our transfer bar, like this, and just set it down in there for the moment. We need to align the trigger, and if you haven't already done so, put your detent back in your trigger there, right here, and we'll go ahead and set our trigger in place just like this. Now this is going to be the pivot hole, and back here is actually going to be where we set that pin on the transfer bar. I'm having a little bit of difficulty seeing from this angle, so let me try here. Okay. There we go, just like that. Alrighty. Now, the next thing we need to do is put the hammer assembly in. And if you did take this apart, it's not hard to put it back on, but there's not very much of a space for that spring to go in, so it can be a pain in the butt. But we'll go ahead and set this in there. Basically what you want to do, let's go ahead and pull the trigger about halfway back, and then insert the hammer like this. And this needs to go in that groove on the trigger assembly, just like that. Okay. Now push it back into the safe position here, and we will take our hand, this piece, and we will put that on the top side. Now the tricky part is this long bar back here is what gets caught by that detent, or that pusher on the back of the trigger. So it needs to go, push it and set that smaller pin in the hole, and then work it into the slot on the back of the frame there. So just like that. Okay. Now the next piece that we are going to put in is actually going to be the trigger spring. And it can be a little bit tricky sometimes, because without the cylinder actually in, this thing does not want to come back. So what I would recommend is go ahead and line up your trigger spring, and then you can use this to fake it into believing that the cylinder is in. No, that didn't work. Okay. This can be the tricky part, because sometimes it's dark. If you've got a headlamp, I highly recommend a headlamp. There we go. Once that's in, go ahead and release it. Our trigger spring is set, and the next thing we can do is go ahead and set the hammer spring in. This hammer spring is ambidextrous, but a lot of them are not, so just pay attention to where you're putting it. Go ahead and seat the base in first, and then once again you're going to have to fake it into thinking that the cylinder's in there. Go ahead and make sure you line up that groove on the back of the hammer, just like that. Alright, and now basically all of our inner working components are assembled inside here. Before we put the cover back on, let's go ahead and make sure to fit our firing pin, retaining pin. This one just likes to fall out, so but when the cover is on, the plate will actually hold this in place, so you don't have to worry about any of that coming out. And it won't go in flush, so don't try to get it in flush. Okay, now let's go ahead and try to seat our cylinder. So this can be a little bit tricky. You don't want this to come out, and it has a tendency to come out and flip around, so watch that very carefully. Right. With any luck, things will lock into place just fine. From here you can actually test the function. Alright. Now we can go ahead and put our cover back on. And pay attention to this up here. You actually need to seat this underneath first, at the top behind the cylinder. And these are fit very tight, so take like a rubber mallet or soft blow side of this hammer here. And just tap on it gently until it seats into place. Alright, we have already seen that this is functioning. We'll go ahead and turn that over and set our cylinder release in place, and then the screw. And we'll screw that down. Okay. Now let's take the two larger screws and go ahead and place those in, just like that. Be very careful not to cross thread any of these screws. If something doesn't feel right, if it's giving you any resistance at all, stop and evaluate. Okay, now the last screw, apart from the grip screw, the last screw, the one that we said had the detent in it, go ahead and take your detent and your spring, make sure that they're together, and insert the detent, insert the spring side into the screw just like this. Now what I recommend from here, because this will fall out, and if it's not set just right, you'll get a lot of resistance trying to open your crane. Turn it over and feed the screw up into the hole and go ahead and get it started, and then tighten it up like that so that the entire time that detent remains inside the screw. Okay. Now verify. Now see, we're having a little bit of a problem with that detent because this is very tight. It should not be that tight. So let's see what the problem is. We'll go ahead and take that screw out. And let's try this again, because sometimes this detent just does not want to sit in the right place. So another thing that you can then try is get your screw started and then turn it over and let it settle in, and maybe that will help resolve things. That feels better. No, it's still being stubborn, so loosen the screw up a little bit. This is the one part that I don't like about this Taurus revolver. It could have done so much better without that. Okay, let's try this again. I heard something click. No, I don't think that's going to be any better either. Well, yeah, that's actually about right. So sometimes all you got to do is just figure it out and let it settle a little bit. Okay. Now there is still one more piece. Got to put the grip back on. Just like that. These grips are interchangeable. You can buy aftermarket grips from different companies like Hogue. Hogue is probably one of the premier grip makers for firearms in general, but especially revolvers. Revolvers and 1911s, etc., etc. Talon is another good one. Hogue and Talon, probably two of the most popular ones. Very long threads on this screw. Alright guys, so hopefully you found the video educational. Hopefully you learned something from it to take home with you. Like I said, a lot of the double action revolvers are very similar in operation and takedown to this. Maybe not all exactly the same. Most notably, Smith & Wesson actually has a locking system built into most of their modern day revolvers that just adds one or two little extra steps, but it's nothing that you guys can't figure out. Like I was saying, they seem complicated at first, but you do this a couple of times and you can take them apart without any real reference. Basically what I'm doing now at this point is I just take them apart and I know exactly where everything goes. It really is not that hard to learn. It's a good revolver. See, it does say Tracker on it here, but you will also hear these referred to as the 627 and several other model numbers. Frame sizes, you'll hear frame sizes a lot, and I would say this is more than likely a knockoff version of a Smith & Wesson. Taurus does that a lot. They do affordable knockoffs of popular firearms, and that gives the general citizenry a better opportunity at getting something they can afford versus trying to save up and spend $1,000 or $1,200 on a revolver. You could probably pick one of these up for around $400, $450, something like that. It shoots great. I really enjoyed shooting it, and hopefully we'll get a chance to go out and do some more work again soon. I am going to have to find an amicable shooting range closer to home, so we'll see what happens there. But anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. My name is Justin, and I'll see you in the next video.